There is a decision being made about you right now, not by your boss, not by your partner, not by anyone in your life today. It was made before you turned 2 years old, and it is quietly controlling every relationship you will ever have. Who you choose, how long you stay, why you leave, and why some people can walk away from you without looking back while you spend months trying to understand what you did wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. It happened before you had language, before you had memory, before you had any idea that something was being decided. Psychologists have a name for it. They call it your attachment style. And once you understand what yours is, you will not be able to unsee it. In 1969, a British psychiatrist named John Bowlby published a theory that the entire psychological establishment tried to bury. He had spent years working in a children's home in London, studying boys who had grown up without stable caregivers, juvenile delinquents, kids who couldn't maintain friendships, teenagers who sabotaged every relationship they were in. What he found wasn't what anyone expected. It wasn't poverty. It wasn't bad education. It wasn't the trauma of war. It was something that had happened in the first 18 months of their lives. Something almost invisible. Bowlby proposed that every infant is born with a single urgent biological mission. Find a safe base, one person, one caregiver, one constant presence that tells your nervous system you are not alone and the world is not dangerous. If you find that base, everything that follows, your confidence, your ability to love, your tolerance for being alone, is built on solid ground. If you don't find it, something else gets built instead. The medical establishment hated this idea. Bowlby was essentially saying that the first year of life, before anyone thought a child was capable of complex psychology, was the year that mattered most. He was right. In 1970, a developmental psychologist named Mary Ainsworth devised one of the most quietly devastating experiments in the history of science. She called it the strange situation. The setup was simple, almost boring. A mother and her toddler are placed in a room with toys. A stranger enters. The mother leaves. The stranger tries to comfort the child. The mother returns. That's it. 8 episodes, 20 minutes. What happened next would take researchers decades to fully understand. Some children, when their mother returned, ran to her immediately, let themselves be held, calmed down within seconds, and went back to playing, like nothing had happened. But a second group did something strange. When the mother came back, they ran toward her and then pulled away. They wanted to be held and refused to be held at the same time. They couldn't settle. They stayed upset long after the danger was gone. And a third group did something even stranger. They didn't react at all. When the mother left the room, they showed no distress. When she returned, they turned their backs. They looked completely fine. Ainsworth's team initially thought these children were unusually independent. They weren't. When researchers measured the stress hormone cortisol in their blood, it was through the roof. The children who looked the most calm were the most internally terrified. They had simply learned, before they could speak, that showing need got them nothing, so they stopped showing it. What Ainsworth had discovered was that every one of those children was running a strategy, not a conscious strategy. The brain doesn't work that way in infants, but a strategy nonetheless. If your caregiver was consistently present, warm when you cried, available when you reached out, your brain learned one foundational truth: other people are safe. You became secure. Roughly half the population falls into this category. If your caregiver was inconsistent, sometimes warm, sometimes cold, sometimes there and sometimes inexplicably gone, your brain learned something different. I have to fight to be seen. You became anxious. You learned to amplify your distress to make sure it couldn't be ignored. Around 20% of people carry this style. If your caregiver was emotionally unavailable, physically present but disconnected, uncomfortable with closeness, dismissive of your needs, your brain made a colder calculation. Needing people is dangerous. You became avoidant. You learn to deactivate your own attachment system. About 25% of the population lives this way. And then there was a fourth group, children whose caregivers were the source of both comfort and terror, through abuse, unpredictability, or chaos. These children had nowhere to go. You cannot run toward the thing that frightens you. You cannot run away from the only person keeping you alive. So their attachment system simply shattered. Bowlby called this disorganized attachment. And the data on what it does to a life is not easy to read. Here is what makes this disturbing. Those strategies don't stay in childhood. Your brain took that original template, built from thousands of interactions in the first 18 months of your life, and carried it forward into every classroom, every friendship, every relationship you have ever been in. The anxiously attached child becomes the adult who checks their phone compulsively waiting for a reply, who reads tone into text messages, who feels a spike of panic when a partner needs space, who loves with an intensity that exhausts the people they love. The avoidantly attached child becomes the adult who genuinely cannot explain why they go cold when someone gets too close, who picks partners they don't fully feel for because it feels safer, who is excellent at the beginning of relationships and disappears at the first sign of real depth. And the disorganized child becomes the adult who simultaneously craves and destroys intimacy, who pushes people away and then panics when they leave, who cannot find a consistent internal experience of being loved because their nervous system never built one. Research has now tracked these patterns across decades. Anxious individuals report significantly higher rates of relationship conflict. Avoidant individuals are more likely to report feeling nothing, not peace, but numbness where connection should be. Insecure attachment in general predicts lower marital satisfaction, higher rates of separation, higher rates of chronic loneliness. None of those people chose any of this. When this theory went mainstream, the world ran with the obvious reading. Bad parenting ruins children. If your parents didn't do it right, you are broken. A generation of adults suddenly had a new explanation for every failed relationship, every bout of anxiety, every self-destructive pattern. That is not what Bowlby said. His actual conclusion was both darker and more hopeful than that. He wrote that attachment styles are not destiny. They are predictions. The brain built that template because it needed to make fast, efficient predictions about how the world works. In a dangerous environment, avoidance is smart. In an unpredictable environment, hypervigilance is smart. The system worked exactly as it was designed to. The problem is that most adults are no longer in the environment the system was designed for. You are not a toddler waiting for someone who may never come back. But your nervous system doesn't know that. It is still running the old code, in a completely different world. The last decade of attachment research has converged on something Bowlby suspected but couldn't prove. Attachment styles can change. Not easily, not quickly, not by reading about them, but through what researchers call a corrective emotional experience. A relationship, therapeutic or otherwise, that consistently provides what the original one didn't. The partner who stays, a therapist who doesn't flinch, a friendship that holds. Over time, with enough repetition, the brain revises its prediction. It is slow. The old template doesn't disappear. It activates under stress, when you're tired, when someone does the exact thing that used to destroy you. You will feel 5 years old in the body of an adult, flooded by a panic that has no rational source. But the window between that feeling and your response can widen. That is what security looks like when you build it in adulthood. Not the absence of fear, just more time between the fear and the reaction, more time to choose. Right now, roughly 4 out of 10 people watching this are operating from an insecure attachment style. Most of them have no idea. They think they are bad at relationships. They think they love too much or not enough. They think there is something fundamentally wrong with them that no one has been able to name. There is a name for it. It was written into you before you could speak. But unlike the mice in Universe 25, who had no choice about the world they were born into, no capacity to understand the pattern they were trapped in, you are watching this. Which means you already know something the toddler in that experiment never got to know. The code running your relationships is not you. It is just the first thing you were taught.